In the past week, multiple people have been fired from public schools and universities following comments on Kirk's death were found on their social media.
Imagine losing your career of 15 years overnight. Not because you broke the law, not because you were bad at your job, but because someone with a microphone and millions of followers decided you were the enemy. This isn't some dystopian fiction. It's happening right now, across America, and at the center of it all is one name: Charlie Kirk. Here's the thing about culture wars in America. They used to play out primarily in the media, in political debates, in the halls of Congress. But something fundamental has changed. The battlefield has expanded to classrooms, corporate offices, and community institutions. And one of the most effective generals in this new kind of warfare is Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA. Think about it. 10 years ago, Kirk was just a teenager with conservative views. Today, he's built an empire that's reshaping how political activism works in America. But along the way, something unexpected started happening. People began losing their jobs: teachers, professors, corporate employees, public officials. And the common thread: they somehow ended up in Charlie Kirk's crosshairs. Turning Point USA began with a simple mission: to identify, educate, train, and organize students to promote conservative values. On the surface, nothing particularly controversial there. America has always had conservative and liberal advocacy groups. But Kirk's organization didn't just want to persuade, it wanted to expose. In 2016, they launched the Professor Watchlist, ostensibly to document college professors who discriminate against conservative students and advance leftist propaganda in the classroom. What started as a database quickly became something more powerful, a spotlight that could be aimed at any educator who caught their attention. As social media amplified every controversy, as news cycles shortened, as America's political divide deepened, the consequences of being featured in one of Kirk's segments or tweets escalated. What once might have resulted in a strongly worded letter to a dean now triggered avalanches of calls, emails, and pressure campaigns. And university administrators, school boards, and corporate leaders, often more concerned with avoiding controversy than defending academic freedom, began to fold. But here's where things get really interesting. Around 2020, something shifted. The targeting became more systematic, more effective, and the consequences more severe. It wasn't just about calling out what Kirk's organization viewed as liberal bias anymore. It was about results. Measurable, countable results, in the form of resignations and terminations. And the strategy evolved. It wasn't enough to identify supposedly woke professors or teachers. Now the focus expanded to curriculum, to books and libraries, to DEI initiatives and corporations, to school policies about gender and sexuality. The net was cast wider, and more people found themselves caught in it. Imagine this. A high school teacher in a small town assigns a reading that includes perspectives on race in America. A student records part of the discussion on their phone. The clip, stripped of context, makes its way to social media, then to right-wing media, then to Charlie Kirk's show or Twitter feed. Within days, that teacher is facing a tsunami of outrage. School board meetings overflow with angry parents, many not even from the district. The superintendent, facing relentless pressure, places the teacher on leave. Eventually, they resign or are terminated. This pattern has repeated dozens of times across the country. And here is the best part, or the worst, depending on your perspective. It works. So why is this happening now? And why is it so effective? First, there's the infrastructure. Turning Point USA isn't just Charlie Kirk anymore. It's a massive operation with chapters across the country, a substantial budget, media platforms, and connections to powerful donors and politicians. When they decide to focus attention on someone, the machinery is already in place. Second, there's the political climate. America's deepening polarization means that nuance is the first casualty. Complex discussions about education, about history, about identity, these get flattened into simplistic battles between woke indoctrination and traditional values. And in that environment, defending someone who's been labeled as woke becomes politically risky. Third, There's the economics of outrage. Media figures like Kirk have discovered that targeting specific individuals generates more engagement than abstract policy discussions. It creates narratives with clear villains and heroes. It gives audiences someone specific to direct their anger toward. And in the attention economy, anger equals revenue. But beneath all of this is something more fundamental, a profound shift in how we think about education, about the role of teachers, about what knowledge is and who should control it. On the surface, it looks like isolated incidents of teachers or professors losing their jobs. But underneath, something very different is happening, a restructuring of power in educational institutions. The tactics aren't new, but the scale and effectiveness are unprecedented. In previous eras, academic freedom was generally protected by institutional norms, by tenure, by professional associations. Those protections haven't disappeared entirely, but they've weakened considerably under the weight of coordinated pressure campaigns amplified by social media. Think about it. When a professor becomes the target of one of these campaigns, university administrators face a calculation. Stand by the faculty member and weather the storm of negative publicity, donor pressure, and political threats, or cut ties and make the problem go away. Increasingly, they're choosing the latter. And each time they do, the playbook becomes more effective. It's not just teachers and professors either. Librarians have been fired for refusing to remove books. Diversity officers have been let go after their positions were characterized as promoting critical race theory. School administrators have lost their jobs for implementing policies aimed at supporting LGBTQ students. The common thread is that they all became targets in the culture war, with Charlie Kirk and similar figures acting as spotters calling in the artillery. What makes this particularly effective is the asymmetry of the situation. For Kirk and other culture warriors, each campaign is just one battle in an ongoing war. If they don't get the result they want, they move on to the next target. But for the individual teacher or professor or administrator, it's their entire career, their reputation, their livelihood on the line. The stakes couldn't be more uneven, and the pressure doesn't just come from outside. As these campaigns have proven successful, internal censorship has grown. Teachers avoid certain topics entirely, even when they're central to their subject matter. Professors steer clear of research areas that might attract unwanted attention. Administrators preemptively shut down programs that might become controversial. The chilling effect spreads far beyond the individuals who actually lose their jobs. So, where does this lead? We're already seeing the effects ripple outward. School boards are increasingly populated by candidates who run specifically on platforms of fighting indoctrination. Curriculum decisions that were once made by educators are now political battlegrounds, and the definition of what constitutes political content keeps expanding. History, literature, science, even math education has been swept into the controversy. But there's also resistance forming. Legal defense funds for educators, alumni groups organizing to protect academic freedom at their alma maters, students speaking out. Some institutions are developing stronger policies to resist external pressure campaigns. The question is whether these countermeasures can match the organized, well-funded machinery that's been built to target educators and others deemed too woke. What we're witnessing isn't just about Charlie Kirk, or Turning Point USA, or even the current culture wars. It's about a fundamental question at the heart of democracy. Who controls knowledge? Who decides what can be taught, discussed, debated? And what happens to a society when fear of losing your livelihood shapes what truths you're willing to speak? The people who have lost their jobs are more than just casualties in a political battle. They're canaries in the coal mine, warning us about the air we're all breathing. So the next time you hear about a teacher or professor or librarian being fired after becoming the target of a political pressure campaign, remember, this isn't just their story. It's our story, about the kind of country we're becoming, about the price of speaking freely in an age of digital pile-ons, about what happens when education becomes a battlefield rather than a commons, and perhaps most importantly, about whether we'll find our way back to a place where learning can happen without fear. Because in the end, a society that makes its educators afraid is a society that has stopped learning itself. The irony in all of this is that organizations like Turning Point USA claim to be fighting for free speech and against censorship. Yet their tactics have created one of the most effective censorship systems in modern America. Not through government action, but through fear. Not through banning books directly, but by making the cost of defending them too high for many institutions to bear. This isn't about left versus right anymore. It's about whether we still believe in the free exchange of ideas that democracy depends on. It's about whether we're willing to sacrifice individual educators to appease the outrage machine. And ultimately, it's about what kind of education we want for the next generation. One based on exploration and critical thinking, or one constrained by fear of becoming the next target. The choice is ours. But with each passing day, with each educator who loses their job, with each curriculum that gets sanitized, that choice becomes harder to make. The machinery of outrage grows stronger. The incentives for institutions to capitulate rather than resist grow more compelling. And the space for genuine education, messy, challenging, sometimes uncomfortable education, grows smaller. That's what's happening as people keep getting fired over Charlie Kirk. It's not just about them. It's about all of us and what we're willing to stand for. If you found this eye-opening, hit subscribe and turn on notifications now. We're exposing stories others won't touch. Your subscription helps these videos reach those who need to see them. Join our community of critical thinkers today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.